So let me show you guys how to cut and sew your very own play suit. Some people call it romper, whatever it is. Let me show you how to cut it. Okay, so the first thing I went ahead to do was to mark my starting line. Okay, so now after marking my starting line, I took the length of this romper at 38 inches. That is folding allowance for the hem inclusive. Okay, so now after taking my length, I went ahead to connect my markings together. Okay, so now after doing this, I went ahead to mark 5 inches. Now after marking 5 inches across the entire length of this fabric, I went ahead to connect my markings together. Okay, so now after connecting my markings together, I came down by 8 inches and I marked my bust point. Okay, so now after marking my bust point, the next thing I went ahead to do is from my starting line, I came down by 14 inches and I marked my shoulder to under bust measurement. Okay, so now after doing this, the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark my half blouse measurement. You guys, this is the second time I'm filming this tutorial, and you'd notice that I've not been posting videos. That is because my filming gadgets showed me shaggy. But God is in control because I have cried my eyes out. Anyway, you are seeing this tutorial now, which means everything is okay now. Okay, so that's my bust point, my under bust point, and my half blouse. Okay, so now the next measurement I marked was my hip point. So I marked my hip, my under bust to hip point measurement, and I drew a straight line. Okay, so now the next thing I went ahead to do was to mark my crouch point. So how you get your crouch point is your hips divided by 4. So my own hips is 44, so divided by 4, that is 11. So I placed my tape at my half blouse and I came down by 11 inches and I marked my crouch line. Okay, some people, what they do is from that their hip line, they come down by either 2 inches or 3 inches and they get their crouch line. But for me, I did my crouch measurement divided, my hips measurement divided by 4, 11 inches, and I marked 11 inches, okay, for my half blouse. Okay, so now after doing this, I went ahead to I was just trying to explain to you guys here that that's what some people do. Okay, so now if you don't want this your crouch line to be really NEPA took light, and I left this so that you people will see the shege they are showing us in this country. Anyways, if you don't want the crouch line to be really close to your V area, you can still like add maybe extra 2 or 3 inches. So that line there is my crouch line. Okay, so my bust line, my under bust point, my half blouse, my hips, my crouch line. Okay, so now for my to start this tutorial, or to start the cutting, I marked my shoulder measurement. So my shoulder is 17 divided by 2, that's 8.5 inches. So I marked 8.5 inches and I drew a straight line. I took my neck width at 3 inches and my neck depth at 3 inches. Okay, so after taking my neck width and neck depth at 3 inches, I went ahead to connect my markings together. Okay, so now after connecting my markings together, we have our neckline there. I marked my bust measurement divided by 4, which is 9.5. I marked it there. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was to slant my shoulder line down by half an inch. After slanting my shoulder line down by half an inch, next thing I went ahead to do was to insert my armhole curve. And to insert my armhole curve, you are going to shape it out. I've shown you guys how to do this more than 10 million times. Okay, so I came in by half an inch, connected it to my shoulder line, and the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my armhole. Okay, I just went ahead to insert my armhole curve, and this is what we have here. So at my under bust point, I mark circumference of my under bust divided by 4, which is 8. At my half blouse, I mark circumference of my waist divided by 4, which is 8. And I just connected my bust point, my under bust point, and to my half blouse. So at that my crouch line now, ladies and gentlemen, I extended the line forward into that 5 inches area. Okay, the next thing I went ahead to do was to divide my hips measurement by 10. So after dividing my hips measurement by 10, I added half an inch for joining allowance. And the next thing I went ahead to do was to insert my crouch curve. Okay, sure you can see the way I inserted my own. That is how you're going to insert your own. So now after inserting my crouch curve, so the distance I took from that line for my crouch curve, I also took it at the hem. Okay, and after doing that, from that point, I came in by 2.5 inches so that I can shape the leg area for this the inseam area for this romper. Okay, so I came in by 2.5 inches and I just went ahead to connect my markings together. Okay, I always like to shape the inseam of my trousers. So now at my hip line, I marked circumference of my hips divided by 4 plus 1 inch. And at the hem, you can also mark circumference of your hip divided by 4 plus 1 inch. But if you want it a little bit tapered, you can mark, you mustn't add that 1 inch. Okay. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was to connect my hip point to the hem. Okay. Then I connected my hip point to my half blouse. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how to cut the front part of a play suit. Okay, so this is how to cut the front part of a play suit. It's looking good, it's looking beautiful, but we are not done. We are not done, ladies and gentlemen. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was to add 2 inches sewing allowance to the entire marking of this play suit. Okay, so I added 2-inch sewing allowance and I just went ahead to connect my markings together. Okay, so after connecting my markings together, the next thing I went ahead to do was to add 1/2 inch joining allowance, okay, to the front part because we are going to join it. It doesn't have half cut, so we join in the middle. So I added 1/2 inch joining allowance. After adding 1/2 inch joining allowance, the next thing I went ahead to do is the front is going to have the zip is not going to be at the back for this particular play suit. So from that point I came down by 21 inches. I marked 21 inches. So after marking 21 inches, the next thing I went ahead to do now was to add another 1/2 inch for my zip allowance. Okay, if the zip is not going to be in front, you don't need to add this extra 1/2 inch for zip allowance. You are going to add it at the back, but since this one is in the front, you add it to the front. So I added another 1/2 inch zip allowance for the front. Okay, and this is what we have here. I just went ahead to connect it. You guys, tailoring has a lot of calculation and mathematics. So if mathematics is not your friend, just forget about tailoring. Okay, so this is my zip allowance area. Then for my shoulder line, I went ahead to add 1 cm joining allowance. For my shoulder line, you can do 1/2 inch. Me, I just like to do 1 cm. Okay, so do you now see why I always have a starting line? So that I will have enough room to add my joining allowance. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, this is what we have here for the front part. The next thing I went ahead to do was to cut it out. Okay, so I just went ahead to gracefully cut the front part of this outfit. So if you watched up to this point, you know you are one step to sewing your perfect romper. I want to ask you, why have you not subscribed to my YouTube channel? Why have you not followed my page on Facebook if you are watching from Facebook? Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you follow me if you are watching on Facebook, and if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Okay, so now I went ahead to cut the front part. I forgot to cut the shoulder line, but I'll still go ahead and do it later. So now, because we are going to use the front to cut the back, you see that the 1/2 inch zip allowance we added, right? We are going to fold it in because we need the front part to cut the back part. So now I went ahead to cut the shoulder line. Remember I told you I forgot to cut the shoulder line. So now this is the front part and it's time to cut the back part. This is what the front part looks like. So it's time to cut the back part, and for the back part, just like we did for the front part, the fabric is on a fold. Okay, if you are going to work with different patterns, like different fabrics, you don't have to put it on a fold. You can just work with one single layer. Okay, so I placed the front part on the back part, the fabric needed for the back part. Let me not bite my tongue. And then first thing I went ahead to do was to extend that crouch line, not the part where, not the sewing allowance line, that exact crouch line. Gong, you see. I extended it. So now after extending it, the next thing I went ahead to do now was to add 3 inches to the back. You can do 2.5. I told you that for me. So let me explain this into you guys. So for the hem as well, you're also going to draw a straight line. So the first one I made, I did 2.5, and also the second one I made, I did 3 inches. So you can just play around with which one works best for you. For me, I prefer the one that was 2.5. You get that? Okay. So now after adding 3 inches to the entire inseam of this of the back part, okay, after adding 3 inches, I also went ahead to add the sewing allowance. So now after adding sewing allowance, the next I went ahead to do was I just used my chalk to trace the outline of the front part. Please hold it down with pin. I forgot to hold my own down with pin and weight, which is what I went ahead to do. So you want to make sure that you hold it down. Me, I went ahead to hold my own down, and I just used my chalk to trace the entire outline out. So now see the way I'm going to shape out my neck area. From that my shoulder line, I just drew a straight line. Remember, this my joining allowance now is not included. So instead of coming down by 1 inch, I came down by 1.5 inch, and I just went ahead to draw out the outline, that's the neckline for the back part. Okay, so now after doing this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. Now between my under bust point and my half blouse, well, we need to shape the back part. So the first thing you want to make sure you do is you transfer the line of your under bust and your half blouse. Make sure you transfer it to the back part, that's the back fabric. Okay, you transfer it in the middle side, and you also transfer it in the outer side. Okay, if my description is confusing, you just look at what I'm doing. So after transferring, this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. I was dancing a bit because, like I told you, this is my second time. The first one I made, the fabric, the first one I filmed, the first tutorial I filmed for you guys, the fabric was fighting with the color of the chalk. So I had a feeling that you guys will not see it clearly by the time I'm done editing. So that's why I used this particular fabric, so you will see it very well. Okay. So now, because we are going to shape the back part, okay, the next thing I went ahead to do, I was not supposed to cut here, but I was cutting. I don't know why. Okay, so now you are going to look for the distance between these 2 points. You're going to look for the midpoint. Okay, so the distance for me was 3 inches, so the middle is 1.5 inch. So I marked that 1.5 inch and I drew a straight line. Okay, so now after drawing a straight line, at that mark there, you're going to add 1/2 inch. If you want to shape the midpoint of your back to prevent a bulge by 1 inch, you add 1 inch. But me, I shaped by 1/2 inch, and after shaping by 1/2 inch, I connected it to my bust and also slanted it into the remaining parts of the outfit. Okay, so now after doing this is what we have here for the back part. So the first thing I went ahead to do, the next thing, not first thing because I've done several things, the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut it out. Now it was at this point my phone started acting like a devil. I did not know that the worst was coming, but in the end, God win. I cried, oh guys, I cried. Okay, so now remember that we transferred the half blouse point and the under bust point in the middle part as well. So I also looked for the middle. So now after looking for the middle between those 2 points, I marked 1/2 inch. Okay, so that 1/2 inch we added to the side, we're now going to take it out. So now remember that I connected it to my bust line, so that's why I drew that line at my bust line, and I just slanted it in, okay, to shape like you guys like to use on this straight, to contour the back part, the middle of the back part, so we don't have a bulge, so it's relaxing well on the back. Okay, so now after doing this, after shaping it in, I just went ahead to cut it out. Okay, so now if you're a beginner, you don't know how to cut, you don't know how to sew, you're having issues with pattern drafting, I have very detailed beginner class. I also have very detailed pattern drafting class. Hit me up on my DM on Instagram so you can join the class. Okay, so now it's time to sew this outfit. So to sew the outfit for the front part, the first thing I went ahead to do was to unravel the zip allowance, and we are going to join it on that initial joining allowance that we marked out. Okay, so you are going to do same thing for the front and for the back part. So I took it over to my sewing machine and I joined it. So after joining the front, I don't even know which one I joined first. I joined the front and I joined the back. So after joining it, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we have here. Okay, this is the back part, and also I also went ahead to mark the dart. Okay, and this is the front part. You can see the front has the zip allowance. Now this is the front part. Okay, I also went ahead to mark out my darts. Okay, so after showing you guys what I just showed you guys, I took it back to my sewing machine and I joined and I picked the dart. Okay, I'm showing you guys different angles. If you don't know how to mark out your dart for your gown, for your skirt, for your blouse, I have a detailed beginner class and pattern drafting class. Chat me up on WhatsApp. The WhatsApp link will be at the end. The WhatsApp number will be at the end of this particular tutorial. Okay, so now this is what the dart looks like when I was done. Looked like when I was done sewing, and of course my baby is with me in this studio. He was busy doing his thing while I was fighting for my life to film a tutorial for you guys. Anyway, just ignore that label there. I was not in the mood to deal with it, but I took it out later. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was to place the back part on the front part, and I went ahead to join it at the, what is this thing called now? Shoulder line. Yeah, I went ahead to join it at the shoulder line. So after joining it at the shoulder line, this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. I joined both shoulders. You will not join one and leave one, oh, because you guys are funny. Okay, so now after joining, the next thing I went ahead to do was to pipe the neckline. Okay, you can use facing. If you don't want to give it little serene, you can use facing. Okay, so if you want a detailed tutorial to know how I prepared the fabric for this piping, just let me know. Okay, so this is the fabric that I want to use to pipe the neckline, or that I used to pipe the neckline. So the first thing I went ahead to do was to open up my zip allowance. Okay, so now after opening up my zip allowance, I used this fabric to pipe the neckline. So you see how I placed this fabric. I opened it up. Now this fabric was not cut straight. It was cut across the grain. Okay, if you cut it straight, it will not relax well. So I just went ahead to use the piping, the already prepared piping casing to cover the neckline, and I just took my time to top stitch. Okay, see, for this piping, there's no rushing. You are not rushing anywhere. Sewing takes, enjoy the sewing process. Take your time. Take your time to do your sewings. Don't be in a hurry. Okay, so now after piping, this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. So now the next thing I went ahead to do was I grabbed this invisible zip. Okay, you can use your normal basic zip, but for this style, invisible zip is just the best. Okay, so I used my invisible zip and I attached my invisible zip to the front part of this outfit. You can see I switched to my domestic machine. This is because I have not bought the zip foot presser for my industrial machine. So now after I want to bite my mouth. After attaching the zip to the front part, you can see it is invisible as invisible can be. Okay, so now the next thing I went ahead to do was to sink the middle, that part that will be in between your bum bum, your inseam, the crotch area. I went ahead to secure the parts together, held it down with office pin. After holding it down with office pin, you want to make sure everything is well aligned, everything is, where it's meant to be. The next thing I went ahead to do was I took it over to my sewing machine and I just attached the front part and the back part at the crotch area. Okay, so now after attaching it at the crotch area, this is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. The next thing I went ahead to do was to mark out my measurement for both the left hand side and the right hand side. So I'm going to join it by the sides. Okay, so after joining the sides, I will also turn over the hem. You guys, if my voice is coming after the action or before the action, I don't know what's wrong with my editor. I've reached out to the people that created the app. They don't know. I don't even know what they are saying. If I was not paying pro, now they say I'm not paying pro. Now I paid for pro, it's not working. So after joining the sides, I went ahead to fold the hem of this Playsuit. Now the next thing I went ahead to do was to cut a basic sleeve. If at this point you don't have to cut a basic sleeve, I have 3 detailed tutorials on my channel on how to cut a basic sleeve. Check the comment section or description box for that particular tutorial. So the first thing, to prep this sleeve, I went ahead to fold the hem and I joined the side. Okay, so I took it over to my sewing machine and I folded the hem of this sleeve. I folded the 2 hem, as bad English. I folded the hem of both of the sleeves and I joined the sides. I folded it and joined the sides. After folding and joined the sides, I went ahead to secure with an office pin to the main outfit, and I just went ahead to attach the sleeve to this outfit. Okay, I just went ahead. I was joining. You want to take your time. Sleeve takes time, ladies and gentlemen. And after doing this is what the sleeve looks like. I love basic sleeves, guys. I love basic sleeves. So now this is what the play suit looks like. This is what the neckline looks like. This is what the sleeve looks like. I love this play suit, guys. Some people call it romper. Some people call it play suit. Whatever it is, I was dancing to Flavor's song. Hmm? I was dancing to Flavor's song. I was having a good time because at this point, God has given me victory. Although after this one, that was when the phone finally shut down. But anyways, we thank God for his mercies. Anyways, this is the first one I made. Okay, this is the first one I made. I love both of them. I'm going to make more. Thank you so much for watching. And here's a WhatsApp number if you want to join the beginner class. See you in my next video. Bye, guys.